Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Joining us today is our good friend Rafi Farber from the Endgame Investor. Rafi, it's great to see you again.
Good to see you, Ivan. Good to see you, Jim. Good to be back as always.
Hey, Rafi. So the big news is the CPI number came out and it's down to 8.5%. I mean, it was over 9%. They were right. They beat inflation. They did it.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? I mean, they were right. They got their soft landing, right?
Yeah, I guess we should all just get rid of our silver and load up on dollars and have a party and get drunk, and everything will be fine, just like everybody else. Yeah. Well, I mean, the headline number, I always ignore it. I don't even report it on the Endgame Investor. I mean, I just say what the number is. But like, yeah, assuming everybody in the world buys the same basket of everything, then everything for everybody rises 8.5%. But no, that's not reality. I mean, the thing that everyone buys, whatever you're going to buy this month in the basket, it's going to be food. And food at home, and food at home, I think, is rising. I think it was like 1.3% for just sequentially versus 1.1% last month. So it's been rising over 1% every month for the past 7 or 8 months, and now we're up to 13.2%. So yeah, everyone's feeling that because everyone buys food and everyone buys food at home. So I mean, and that really is the crux of it, because the poorer people get, the more proportion of their income they're going to be spending on food, and the less they're going to be spending on other things. So the price of expensive cruises or the newest Under Armour underwear and hat, designer clothing is going to go down, because you know what, when you're faced with either having to eat or wearing the best hat, you'll eat, and the prices of the hat will go down. So, the way to track hyperinflation is to track the food prices, and that's what's going on. It's the highest since, I think, 1979, which is, it was a big year in the gold and silver world. And that's coming too. Exactly what year? Maybe 2022, maybe 2023, but it's coming. We know it.
Well, we've been watching a lot of these protests springing up around the world. We've been tweeting out a lot of their videos. Sri Lanka, their electricity rates, the government just fell because everyone saw those crazy videos of the palace being taken over and the prime minister fleeing the country. Well, now they requested an 800% increase in electricity rates, but they got approved 264%. I mean, and my comment was, wait till if they thought the protests were bad, wait till the bills arrive next month for this one. But you're seeing this all over the world, aren't you, Rafi? These types of energy shocks.
When people can't afford energy and they can't eat, they go out to the streets, because what else are you going to do? You may as well go out to the streets and protest. The problem is nobody knows what to protest for, and the government, even if they did know what to protest for, wouldn't know how to respond to it. So you have all these dangerous situations. It's not like the people on the streets are the friends of liberty or anything, or they know what to do. They're just angry, and they're angry because they can't afford the basic necessities of living. And when that happens, and you have people who don't understand economics that are being angry, and they want what they want, they're going to destroy even more than the current government is destroying. I mean, we saw it in the Soviet Union and communist China. It's all the same story. So these protests, not that I'm not saying I don't identify with them, and I don't feel sympathy for the people who do not have, energy and food, but they don't know what to do. Yeah. And neither do their governments. They don't understand that you need liberty in order to reset these things. And when you do reset them, it requires a lot of pain. Just like when an individual goes bankrupt, he's got to lower his standard of living drastically, and that's the reality that has to be accepted, or your standard of living will fall even more drastically, and you might even get killed. We've seen that in so many of these communist revolutions, and that's what these people are calling for, generally speaking. It's a big mess, and we need some kind of a leader to speak sense to these people, including Americans, including Europeans. Everyone's stuck in the same fallacies, and they don't know what to do.
Right.
The U.S. market seems to be rejoicing over just a small decrease in the CPI number from over 9% to 8, and we all know it to 8.5%. We all know it's fake anyways. It's all in the
Right.
sun number.
Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on! Ah!
How do gold and silver investors sort of interpret this right now?
The ultimate answer to the question is gold and silver will turn around when the Fed turns around, and
Right.
a lower CPI rate is going to give them an excuse not to turn around. But if you look at the CPI measures, and you can find this on Trading Economics, from like around 1977 to 1980, it's not like it didn't go straight up. There were months where it went sharply down and then sharply higher from there. The process of hyperinflation, the process of rising consumer prices and the end of a monetary system, it's not like a diagonal line that just keeps going up at the same rate. It goes
Right.
crazy up and then crazy down, and then even more crazy up and crazy down. It drives everybody nuts, everybody on both sides of the equation. And to think that you can just buy some gold and silver, which you can't, this is possible. And this is my job for what I do. I try to keep people focused on what must be coming. And since we're always being pinged every second with every little market movement, it drives us all crazy. But you gotta be aware of the reality. And the reality is every time this sort of process is played out in history, gold and silver have gone to infinity in currency terms, and then everything becomes tradable in them, and then you return to the physical base of the pyramid. That's just what happens every single time, and this time is not going to be an exception just because we are more technologically advanced. Maybe we're more technologically advanced, but we're just as stupid as we've always been. And there's nothing different about human nature. There's nothing new under the sun. It's all the same stuff.
You know, Rafi, one of the things that we watch closely on Wall Street Silver, and I know you've covered it on your YouTube channel also, is the drain of the Comex. And, one of our guys on Wall Street Silver, the subreddit, is Ditch the Deep State, and he tracks this stuff very closely and almost puts out a daily report on Reddit for this. And the drain of gold out of Comex has been pretty steep. This is since the squeeze started back in January of 2021. But just this year, and I'd say even in the past couple of months, the drain's gotten really steep. And what are you watching for here? Is this notable, or is this just sort of, noise?
I think it's notable. I think it's notable because it is the biggest monthly drain of gold from the Comex on a monthly basis ever. It's never been this fast. Let's see if it continues. But what does a drain of Comex supplies mean? I mean, and if you check the London Bullion Market Association, the LBMA, which is theoretically where a drain would go if prices were low in New York and high in London, you'd buy in New York and you'd sell to London, and the flows would go that way. But that's not happening because the LBMA gold supply is pretty much stagnant since 2020, hasn't changed. So there's somebody is taking the gold off, and it's not just registered supplies; it's also eligible, meaning the physical bars are actually moving out of the vault, not just warrants being exchanged. This started with Silversqueeze, which is pretty much what brought physical demand to the limelight, to the public eye. Until Silversqueeze, we were just a group of gorillas or silverbacks or silver bugs, whatever you want to call us. We were just eccentric people. But now we're still eccentric people, but our message has at least been registered by the public, and some of them are responding. So when gold moves off of the Comex physically, that means somebody is taking it and selling it off the Comex for some kind of a profit. Otherwise, why would it leave? There's no reason.
It's either going into retail hands or central banks or some big billionaire's private vault. It's going somewhere.
Yeah, so it's not going to London. I think it's going to retail markets. Maybe some of it's going to central banks. I hope not very much of it is going to central banks. That's one thing I want to clear up that's important. We don't want to cheer the fact that central banks are buying gold. Okay, that's not what we want, because if they do, that means they could eventually affect a reset that might actually work and enslave us even more, just like FDR did in 1933, 1934, when he bought the whole gold supply and and basically stole it. So
Mhm.
we want central banks to have as little gold and silver as possible. They don't have any silver, but we don't want them to have any gold because we want them to be as powerless as possible when this thing falls, so the power can return to the people.
Right.
And it sounds exciting when central banks buy gold and the dollar number goes up and we get excited, but it's not what we want. I'm not in this for dollar gains, even though I like dollar gains. I enjoy them. I want them. I'm in this because I'm watching human history here, and I got a front row seat because I know what to look at, and it's exciting to be alive, and I want the power to return to the people, meaning to individual, wealthy, liberty-minded people who understand what is important in humanity.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's keep this drain going. Let's see if it keeps going. It's the opposite of what happened in 2020. In 2020, we were all excited about the deliveries, but nobody was paying attention to the direction of the deliveries. The direction was the gold was going into the Comex and not out of it. Now it's going out. So it's things have finally started reversing. That's a good sign. Let it continue.
Yeah, so you were mentioning LBMA. This guy on Twitter, Michael, he has sort of this combined Comex plus LBMA inventory graph that I like. This guy's well worth following on Twitter if you're on there. But here's sort of, this shows you really how steep it's been. This was when the Silversqueeze began. This is combined Comex plus London silver inventories. And it's fallen dramatically in the past, couple of months. Whereas you were saying gold is stagnant on LBMA. That's not the case with what's going on in silver. Have you been watching that also?
Yes. Silver has been falling steeply both on Comex and LBMA. That means the supply is going out. It's being decentralized to somebody else. And that silver, we don't have to worry about central banks buying silver. Central banks don't buy silver. It's not worth it for them. The silver is public money. It's not
Right.
central bank money, and they're not going to buy silver. So when we see the supply actually falling, that means that would make sense because the physical premiums for silver, especially for Eagles, I think are like 50+%. And for European coins, I forgot what they're called, or maple leafs or whatever, they're like something like 30%. So there's money to be made here by people who can take the supply off the LMA and the Comex and supply it to the mints. It makes sense. So the more we see premiums elevated, the more we'll see these supplies leave the centralized collections, and the better off everything will be. So I think there's like 55 million registered ounces left on the Comex. I think the lowest was something like 20 million, I think in 2016 when silver bottomed out. So if we get below 20 million, that would be something special. And eventually we're gonna get to zero because there's gonna be a silver default. It's going to happen. And then that's when the physical markets become the primary markets, which is how the world was until 1974. So it's not like this is unprecedented. And then, how do you price silver? Based on how much it costs to dig it out of the ground and versus how much you can sell it for. So you don't really need a futures market for it at all, unless you have a paper that's trading as the silver substitute, which is what we have now. So let's see how low it can go. And if we've drained about 100 million ounces since Silversqueeze, that was a year and a half ago. So we're within 30 million ounces of the record. That could be drained, 2-3 months even.
Yeah, that could happen quickly too. Or, by the end of this year, it would not surprise me if we're pushing towards that record number. Something's got to change. I mean, as long as they're keeping the price down at $20 an ounce, there's all incentive in the world to drain this off the Comex.
One quick thing I wanted to say about silver and Comex is I looked back at the vault statistics from 1978 to 1980, and they weren't moving that much. They were pretty steady, which functionally it means that what was driving the silver price back then was the physical markets. It was the retail markets. People were going crazy buying silver coins and rounds and junk silver. That's what was happening in 1980. And the futures paper markets were following what was going on in the public in the retail square. That's when the physical markets were actually taking control. So when we see that again, we should see similar prices. There's a lot more metal in the Comex now than there was back then. So a lot of it has to be drained in order to take advantage of these premiums. But we should see the physical markets take over, and that's when the price will go back to 1980 levels, which would probably be something around $500.
Yeah. We're looking forward to it. We are definitely looking forward to it. I know we have to make this a short video today because Rafi's going camping and he told us he's got to hop in a car with 5 kids. So otherwise we'd love to talk a lot more with him, but he's got to go deal with that torture. And you know, have fun camping, Rafi. It sounds like a horrible time with so many children, but you know, you signed up for it. And
But the family that I'm going with has more kids than me. I think
Oh, wow.
so, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So have fun camping, and we'll talk to you again in the future, Rafi. Thanks for
Take
joining
care,
us
Rafi.
on short notice.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.